So I finally got that piece on here. I was having a devil of a time getting the little tags that fit in, that are on the end of this piece here, to slide cleanly into the slots that you can see. It's this bar of slots across the middle, this bar here, that join into those slots, and they really weren't going cleanly. So what I ended up doing, and not just, I was doing the thing I showed you before, sort of trying to smooth and scrape off those edges, but it wasn't quite working. So what I did is I got a nice fine piece of sandpaper. This is, I think it's 800 grain sandpaper wrapped around a little block like this, and I just sanded a little bit just at the edge there. Really, it was just a question of smoothing those teeth, so that instead of catching as they slide into the slots, they slide in smoothly, and it really worked well. Just a few swipes of the sandpaper smoothed off the edges, and now they basically just slide in beautifully. I think some of it had to do with I had already done some of the cleaning off with the knife first, and then the sandpaper just basically smoothed off the edges, so that actually slots in beautifully cleanly in there. Now I know what's going to happen next. There's going to be some kind of stringers that join along here, so I'm kind of thinking that I'm not going to glue this piece yet until I see how the next part comes in. And so I think what we'll do is I'll just set that aside, and then we'll see what happens next. Well, that didn't take long. So the next step is exactly what I said, which is to take this piece and attach two, they're not really stringers, but some sort of strengthening rods on both sides of this, what they're calling a head frame now. So, and it turns out that they're actually the next step in the diagram. They're J, and J on the sheet is these two pieces right here. Both of them, they're the same. So two J's that will basically join up along the top here. So I'm going to pop those open, click them out of there, and then line them up. And then once I have that strengthening kind of alignment piece in, then I'm actually going to glue that. So I'll show you that in a second. Well, that was quite an experience, and it was really, really important. Learned a few things through that. So, I've got that dry in place. I haven't glued it yet, but I'll just let you know a couple of really important things. The first one is that, even though the instructions actually say to put this piece, which is I, on first, and then to do the two J's, and you remember I said, I was going to not fix that first before I figured out how those things worked. Well, that was quite important, because it turns out that getting these two J's on was quite awkward and fiddly, and would have been very, very difficult if I had the I in place as well. So now that what I've done actually is put the two J's in, and then it's actually going to be very, very simple to just slide the I over the end, and it basically clips into place with all the slots exactly where they need to be. So that was the first thing. So switching I and J, I would do that if I were you. I would put the J's in first before you pop the I on the end. The second one is these J pieces. They're called J pieces, that's the labels, they're not J's, but there's a couple of things to notice about that. You see this little slot here that needs to slide in to this slot here on that former. They're very finicky, and as cut on my copy anyway, they really didn't slide in well. And what I found was that actually, in order to get it to slide in cleanly, so that it actually lines up with that round piece there, rather than sort of sticking out, is that I actually ended up having to cut out the slot a little deep, just a touch deeper than it originally was, than it actually came out of on the die cut or the laser cut. So this little slot in the middle was just not quite deep enough so that the piece would slide in the way it needs to be. So now and also, you know, the same techniques that I showed you earlier about getting these things to slide in, you know, cleaned up those teeth or tags at the end. And in fact, I cleaned them first with the knife and then with some sandpaper, and also sanding on both sides of here so that there's a smooth surface for it to slide into the slot. And then the similar thing with both sides of this this former, because that needs to slide down there, and it needs a smooth surface to slide into. So there was lots of finicky work, very carefully, just scraping away just a little bit, sanding away just a little bit, fitting it, seeing if it worked, not quite, adjusting it, doing it again, until I finally got this piece to the point where that kind of slides in nicely, slots in here, and then we'll enable that that last I piece, that last J piece to slot over the top. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pop those out and glue them with super glue and put them into place. This is final now. This is ready to go, and then I'll have a nice solid what do they call it? Head frame. The head frame, the power assembly piece all connected together and ready for the next major step, which is building the fuselage around it. So I'll glue that, and then I'll show you how that looks.